The Empire had conquered 600 worlds across 3 galaxies. Their soldiers stood 12 feet tall with skin made of living metal that could repair itself in seconds. Their ships blocked out entire suns. When they arrived in the Sol system in the year 2847, every species in the known universe sent humanity the same message: surrender, run, hide, do anything except fight, because no weapon in existence could scratch armor. The Galactic Council had tried everything against these conquerors. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids did nothing. Antimatter bombs that could crack planets only made them angry. The most advanced civilizations had thrown their greatest weapons at them for 10,000 years. Nothing worked. Their biological metal bodies absorbed energy. They fed on radiation. Kinetic impacts bounced off like rain on stone. The Council had given up. They called the Unbreakable Ones. When the fleet of 2 million ships entered human space, Admiral Wei stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship and received the Council's final warning. A hologram of the ambassador, a being made of crystalline light, appeared before her. The ambassador's voice carried the weight of ancient grief. They had watched countless species die fighting They did not want to watch another. Admiral listened to the warning with a calm expression. The ambassador explained that humanity should use their remaining time to evacuate what they could. Perhaps a few million humans could escape to the outer reaches of the galaxy. They could live as refugees, scattered and broken, but alive. They would take Earth. They would take Mars. They would take every human colony. This was certain. This was unavoidable. When the ambassador finished speaking, Admiral smiled. It was not the smile of someone afraid. It was the smile of someone holding a secret. She thanked the ambassador for the concern. Then she said something that confused every alien species monitoring the transmission. She said humanity had been preparing for this moment for 300 years. She said humanity had built 10 guns specifically designed to break the unbreakable. The ambassador did not understand. No species had ever defeated Their technology was beyond comprehension. Their biology was perfect. The ambassador asked what possible weapons humans could have created that the combined might of the galaxy had failed to produce. Admiral ended the transmission without answering. In secret facilities buried deep beneath Earth's surface, 10 massive structures hummed with power. These were not ordinary weapons. Each one represented a different approach to an impossible problem. Human scientists had studied every failed attack against for centuries. They had analyzed the data from species that no longer existed. They had found patterns that no one else had noticed. The first weapon was called the resonance engine. Human physicists discovered that metal had a frequency. Everything that exists vibrates at a specific rate. This living armor was no different. The resonance engine could produce a sound wave tuned exactly to that frequency. When the wave hit bodies, their metal skin vibrated so violently that it tore itself apart from the inside. The second weapon was the gravity spike. Absorbed energy, so humans decided to use force without energy. The gravity spike created a focus point of gravitational attraction so intense that it could crush anything down to the size of a marble. The armor was strong, but it could not resist being compressed by the weight of a dying star concentrated into a single point. The third weapon was the temporal fracture cannon. Human researchers had made a breakthrough that no other species had achieved. They learned how to fire a beam that aged whatever it touched by millions of years in an instant. Metal was tough, but nothing could survive having its atoms decay through eons of time in a microsecond. The fourth weapon was the void lance. This device opened a microscopic hole to a dimension of pure emptiness, not vacuum, true nothing. When this nothing touched matter, that matter simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no reaction. The atoms just disappeared as if they had never been created. The fifth weapon was the neural disruptor. Scientists discovered that the metal bodies were controlled by an organic brain hidden deep inside. The neural disruptor sent a wave that overwhelmed any biological nervous system. It did not damage the body. It simply turned off the mind controlling it. Soldiers would collapse like puppets with cut strings. The sixth weapon was the molecular. Human chemists found a way to break the bonds that held atoms together. One shot from this weapon and armor would crumble into dust. The living metal could repair damage, but it could not repair itself if it was no longer connected on a fundamental level. The seventh weapon was the entropy accelerator. This device increased disorder in a targeted area. Order became chaos. Structure became randomness. Bodies relied on incredibly precise internal systems. The entropy accelerator turned that precision into malfunction. Systems failed. Organs stopped working. The perfect biological machines became broken beyond repair. The eighth weapon was the quantum eraser. Every particle exists in multiple states at once until observed. The quantum eraser forced matter into an undefined state and kept it there. Their bodies became clouds of probability instead of solid objects. They existed and did not exist at the same time. They could not move. They could not think. They were frozen in quantum uncertainty forever. The ninth weapon was the photonic inverter. Light carried energy that they absorbed. The photonic inverter created antilight that extracted energy instead of delivering it. When this beam hit soldiers, it drained them completely. Their living metal went cold and dark. Their internal systems shut down from energy starvation. The 10th weapon had no fancy name. Humans simply called it the hammer. It was a projectile accelerated to 99% of the speed of light. They could absorb energy. They could resist kinetic impacts, but nothing in the universe could survive being hit by an object carrying that much momentum. The hammer did not try to be clever. It just hit so hard that clever was unnecessary. The fleet approached Earth with absolute confidence. Their emperor watched from his throne ship, amused by reports that humans were not evacuating. He had conquered hundreds of species that had tried to resist. They always failed. Their weapons always failed. He expected this to be the same. When the first wave of ships entered weapons range, Admiral gave the order to fire all 10 weapons simultaneously. What happened next became the most studied military event in galactic history. The resonance engine sent invisible waves through space. Soldiers on the nearest ships suddenly collapsed as their metal bodies shattered from within. They died screaming as their own armor became 1,000 blades tearing them apart. The gravity spike activated and crushed a battlecruiser into a ball the size of a human fist. 200,000 soldiers died instantly, compressed into matter so dense it glowed with heat. The temporal fracture cannon aged the Emperor's personal guard by 50 million years in less than a second. Their bodies turned to dust that had been waiting eons to fall. The Void Lance erased an entire battalion from existence. One moment they were marching toward transport ships. The next moment there was empty space where they had stood. No bodies, no debris, nothing. The neural disruptor shut down the minds of every on 12 ships at once. They fell where they stood, unconscious forever, their metal bodies becoming silent tombs for sleeping brains that would never wake. The molecular dissolved the flagship's armor plating. Officers watched in horror as their supposedly invincible hull crumbled like sand castles in a rising tide. The entropy accelerator turned a perfectly organized invasion force into chaos. Ships malfunctioned. Weapons failed. Soldiers lost control of their own bodies as their internal systems went haywire. The quantum eraser froze the Emperor's elite guard in a state of permanent uncertainty. They stood motionless, flickering between existence and non-existence, unable to move or think or die. The photonic inverter drained power from an entire section of the fleet. Ships went dark. Life support failed. Soldiers felt their strength leaving them as the antilight sucked away everything that made them function. The hammer struck the Emperor's throne ship at nearly the speed of light. The impact released more energy than a supernova. The largest ship in the fleet ceased to exist in a flash of pure white light. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Empire had lost 1.7 million ships and 400 billion soldiers. The survivors retreated in absolute panic. They had never lost before. They did not know how to process defeat. Admiral sent a message across all galactic frequencies. She addressed it to the Emperor, who had escaped on a shuttle moments before the hammer struck his ship. Her words were simple. She told him that humanity had been listening for 3 centuries. They had learned from the failures of others. They had asked themselves one question over and over again. If nothing works, then find 10 things that might. The ambassador appeared on her bridge again, trembling with shock. Crystalline tears ran down his face as he asked how humans had accomplished the impossible. Admiral explained it simply. Other species had tried to find one perfect solution. When that failed, they gave up. Humans never looked for one answer. They looked for many. They attacked the problem from every angle simultaneously. If the first method failed, the second might work. If the second failed, there were 8 more behind it. Humans did not believe in unbeatable enemies. They believed in problems that needed more solutions. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. Species that had lived in fear stared at the recordings of the battle in disbelief. The unbreakable ones had been broken. The unstoppable force had been stopped, and it was done by a species that had only achieved 800 years ago. When the Council asked humanity to share these weapons, Admiral agreed under one condition. Every species would contribute their own unique solutions. Humanity had proven that diversity of approach was more powerful than any single perfect answer. The Council accepted. For the first time in 10,000 years, free species across the galaxy began to hope again. The Emperor sued for peace 6 months later. His empire crumbled as conquered worlds rose up in rebellion. They had seen what humanity had done. If one species could defeat the invincible, then perhaps others could too. The age of domination ended not with a single blow, but with the combined weight of 10 impossible weapons fired by a species too stubborn to accept that something could not be done. Years later, historians would ask Admiral why humanity had succeeded where so many others had failed. Her answer became the most quoted statement in galactic history. She said that every species looked at thee and saw an unbreakable wall. Humanity looked at that same wall and saw a puzzle waiting to be solved. Then they did not try to solve it once. They tried to solve it 10 different ways and accepted that some answers would fail while others succeeded. That was humanity's greatest weapon, not the resonance engine, not the gravity spike, not even the hammer. Their greatest weapon was their refusal to accept that any problem only had one solution. They understood something that the galaxy had forgotten. Every wall has cracks, and if you hit those cracks from enough angles with enough different tools, even the strongest wall will eventually fall.